Hold up. Wait a minute. I wish you love, peace, and hair grease.
Love, peace, and hair grease, y'all.
Yeah, you know I'm shooting straight from the hip.
This is Carla Renata, aka the Curvy Critic, and I shoot straight from the hip.
Yeah, you know I'm shooting straight from the hip.
Hi, everybody. Hello. It's your girl, Carla Renata, aka the Curvy Film Critic. If you are joining me on the YouTube, give me a big thumbs up to let me know you were here. Click that bell for notifications and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Today, I got some reviews, I got some interviews. I won't waste a whole lot of time talking, but I usually tell you what I did the week before, and then I go right into it. But I do have a little bit of sad news going into this particular broadcast. Earlier this morning, a friend of mine and a former coworker, his name is Leslie Jordan. And when you see him in this picture, you'll know exactly who he is. He became a sensation on the internet during the pandemic, but I know him as playing my sister on an ABC sitcom called The Neighbors. Here he is pictured with myself and Tox Olagondier, who played our sister. And unfortunately, Leslie lost his life this morning in a car accident. Um, I don't have many details about the accident or what caused it, but it is believed that he had a medical emergency, like maybe a heart attack or something, behind the wheel of a car, which caused him to crash into a building. So I just wanted to give him his homage because he was a dear friend. He would take me to go eat barbecue and have me laughing until I was in tears. So rest in paradise, my friend. And you guys will know him from Will and Grace. He played a nemesis of Karen, played by my other friend, Megan Mullally. And he won an Emmy as Best Guest Star in a comedic series for that role. All right, moving on. That was hard. Sorry. So there's a film coming out called Empire of Light. This young man that's in the picture, his name is Michael Ward, and he plays Stephen. In this photograph, he is pictured opposite Colin Firth, who plays the manager of this movie theater where he and Stephen work. But I had the opportunity, thanks to Searchlight Pictures, to moderate a Q&A with Michael as he is on the move to get that Oscar nomination, baby, for his role opposite the lovely Olivia Colman. I also was invited by my good friend, I call her AJ, but that's Angelique Jackson. She is the senior entertainment writer for Variety magazine, and she invited me to go with her to the Griot Awards. The Griot is an online outlet just like mine, but they've been around a lot longer and have a lot more cachet, but they were purchased by Byron Allen along with his acquirement of the Black News Channel, and they had their first ever awards ceremony this weekend. And we had a good time. There I am on the red carpet, but baby, the thing that you want to know about the Griot Awards is this picture right here. Miss, from left to right, if you're looking at your screen, Miss Fantasia, Miss Yolanda Adams, Miss Patti LaBelle, Miss Jennifer Hudson, and Queen Latifah. Baby, when I tell you they sang Superwoman and peeled the paint off the wall. I have no idea when this is going to air, but y'all, I'm going to tell you when it's going to air because they're going to blow back your wigs. They're going to take your braids and your locks out. They sang their faces off. It was the highlight of the evening. And then sitting at my table was this lovely lady, Nicole Hannah-Jones. You remember all the controversy around her getting an Ivy League offer to teach, and they didn't want to meet her salary as a Black woman. She was like, no, thank you. I'm going over to Howard University, my alma mater. Y'all know I couldn't get through a broadcast without mentioning Howard University. And it was homecoming this past weekend. So me and her spent homecoming at the Griot Awards. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But that's what I was up to this weekend. So having said all that, let me get into the films for this week. All right, let's get on into it. I saw this film and I didn't have an opportunity to talk about it last week. Oh, I forgot two other things. So before I get into this next film, so Till, the movie that I've been speaking about for quite some time now, ever since I came back from the Toronto International Film Festival, it is going into wide release on October 28th. Also on that day will be a piece that I wrote for the artisan section of Variety magazine. It is about the hairstylist and the makeup artist for Till, Jazzman's Blues, which is currently streaming on Netflix, and The Woman King, which is a Sony Pictures joint starring Viola Davis. So I spoke with the hairstylist, the lead hairstylist, and the lead makeup people for all three of those films. And that piece is going to show up in Variety. The digital, I think, now I might have this backwards. I think the digital version shows up on Friday, and the print version shows up on Wednesday. So I get it in print too. I'm very excited about that. And then I also have an op-ed dropping on that same movie Till with RogerEbert.com. So two pieces for me on Till, and then I also next week. I'm not sure if I'm doing this before I talk to y'all next week or after, but I just wanted to put it on, have you put it on your calendar. I do some work for KCUR, which is an NPR station in Kansas City, Missouri. And so I will be talking about a plethora of titles there that are streaming in theaters and on television. So I will put the link up in my social media so that you can go and take a listen and talk to us in real time. Okay. All right. So let's get to the first film that I want to talk about. It is called Ticket to Paradise, and it stars Julia Roberts and George Clooney. Look at them. Don't they look beautiful? Let me tell you something. All you need to know about Ticket to Paradise is that George Clooney and Julia Roberts are perfect together on screen. They have an energy and a chemistry that is just easy. They're freaking hilarious. They make this film worth watching, and that's not to diss Caitlin Dever, who plays their daughter, or Maxine Boutier. But when I tell you it's a situation, it's a situation, and I laughed my ass off. They are so freaking funny, and I just, it's a lot harder to do comedy than it is to do drama for me. I mean, it's easier to do comedy than it is drama. And both of them, they know how to do both seamlessly. This film was hilarious, and it deals with this man and his ex-wife. They're divorced, and they race to Bali, where their daughter, Caitlin Dever, is in Indonesia, and she's decided that she wants to marry a seaweed farmer. And then they desperately try to sabotage the wedding, bickering about it the whole time, and finally find out or discover that they have feelings amongst themselves, even though Julia Roberts is, well, I don't want to give that away. Julia Roberts is in another relationship, but yeah, they just don't want their daughter to make the same mistake that they made 25 years ago when she was born. And it's a cute film. I mean, it's cute, it's fun. You go to see it because of George Clooney and Julia Roberts. That's it. That's all I got to say about Ticket to Paradise. So it's streaming on Peacock and it's in theaters right now. I also want to talk about this movie that's coming up called Call Jane. And Call Jane is a deep little flick only because it stars Miss Elizabeth Banks and Miss Sigourney Weaver, Wumi Musaku from Loki, and Kate Mara. Remember Kate Mara? She was on oh God, I can't even remember the name of that show with Kevin Spacey that was on Netflix. But anyway, these ladies star in this movie, and it's called Jane because Jane was a code word for an underground group of women that performed abortions for people who could not afford to get them, because it takes place in 1968, and during that time you were only able to get an abortion if you were a person of means, basically meaning that you were white and you had money. So if you were Black, Latino, you were underage, any of those of the above that I just mentioned and more, you could not afford to get an abortion. And so Elizabeth Banks plays this housewife named Joy, who literally is thrilled with the news of her pregnancy until she learns that it's going to pose a threat to her own life. She has nowhere to turn until she meets this underground group of women, the Janes, who risk everything to provide people like her with a choice. Now, I'm going to come back on camera and talk about this for just a second because I'm very passionate about it. If you follow me on social media at all, you know I'm always posting things on behalf of Emily's List, which is very pro-choice. and so am I. So, having said that, this is the and the thing that's funny but not funny is that this takes place in 1968, and it takes place in Chicago. And when the Chicago mob discovered that there was money to be had, then they supported it. I think that's hilarious that the Chicago mob would support something of that nature, but these women, their own husbands and these doctors in the hospital wouldn't support it. That just is of note. Um, but what I want to say about this film is that when when women mobilize despite our racial differences, we change things. We've done it over and over and over again. We've done it with the suffragette movement. We did it with Roe versus Wade, even though it got turned around. But I'm confident that we can, find some kind of way to flip that back around in our favor. Because this is the thing. I was watching an episode of Grey's Anatomy last week, and one of the episodes, in this particular episode, dealt with a 10-year-old girl. I think she was 10 years old, like somewhere between like 10 and 14, who got pregnant. She slept with this little boy one time and got pregnant. By overturning Roe versus Wade, by taking away the morning after pill, you find out that you end up in situations like this. Think about what your mindset was when you were at 10, 11, 12, 14 years old, when some little raggedy boy came up to you and was like, "Oh, I like you. You're cute. Let me kiss you." And then the kissing turns into other things, and boop, uh-oh, now you got a bump in your stomach. So I say that because this film couldn't be more timely, and it is directed by Phyllis Nagy, who directed Carol. She seems to be a director that is always bringing women's issues to the forefront for us to have a very invigorated conversation, and I am not mad at her for it. And the performances in this film, I'm telling you right now, Elizabeth Banks is given a career best in this movie. I promise you, you do not want to miss this film. It's dropping by roadside attractions on October 28th. I forgot to mention that Ticket to Paradise is already in theaters, but baby, this film is something else, and it packs a powerful punch. Again, it is called Call Jane. It stars Sigourney Weaver, Wumi Musaku, Elizabeth Banks, and Kate Mara, and it will hit theaters on October 28th, produced by Roadside Attractions and directed by Phyllis Nagy. All right, so now there's this other film that I saw called Armageddon Time. But before I get to that, let me go in these comments and say hello to my boy Brandon, because he always shows up. So he gave me some messages. Let me read his messages. I always read his messages. He said, "Hey, Kirby, just wanted to pop in and say I've been doing great in my animation classes. They're going well, and even working more on my web comic. His birthday is coming up this Sunday, and watching out for more Loud House and Hero Academia, and watching a Playhouse Disney classic on Disney Plus and by Doug creator. I think it says by Doug creator Jim Jenkins, called PBJ Otter. And he says, I'm also hearing that what's this? Delta? Pinocchio is getting rave reviews at the London Film Fest, and he's telling me he can't wait for Wendell and Wild on Netflix on October. I think it's October 28th. Yeah, it's October 28th. So thank you, Brandon. I love you. Have a great time in your classes, and thank you for stopping by and saying hello to me, even when you leave messages for me. I really love that. Thank you so very much. All right, so I'm gonna go down here and we're going to move on to this other film. It's called Armageddon Time, and it stars the incomparable and fabulous Miss Anne Hathaway. Let me tell you something about this film. The thing about this film that is a little, I don't know, I don't want to say, okay, let me just find a way to say this. So there's a film that's coming out called The Fablemans, and it is based on the real life story of Steven Spielberg. It deals with a Jewish family, but mostly a Jewish family that has a son that wants to be a filmmaker. This film, Armageddon Time, is also a coming of age story with a Jewish family, talking about the strength of family and generational pursuit of the American dream, being Jewish in America. But unlike The Fablemans, it has a little racial overtone to it. So it's very similar to this other film. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, because when I saw it, I immediately thought about The Fablemans. Armageddon Time is produced by Focus Features and is written and directed by James Gray. So, like the Fablemans, it also has a grandfather that's very close with the grandson, right? In this instance, it happens to be Sir Anthony Hopkins and Banks Repetta, who we're seeing in this photo right here. That little boy, Banks Repetta, is a force to be reckoned with. I'm looking forward to seeing some great things from him. But he and Anthony Hopkins have some lovely, lovely, lovely scenes. And so do he and this little young man, Jalen Webb. Jalen Webb, I think, is he on All American? He's on another show. I can't remember which one it is right now, but him and the two of them steal this movie. It's worth watching it just for the two of them. They have this friendship that is born out of boredom in the classroom and the fact that they're both different. Banks is a redheaded Jew. The Jalen is a little black boy who's living with his grandmother. She's sick, and he is always getting into trouble. And there's a couple of scenes, and there's a lot of racial disparity going on in this film. And I wish that the director, James Gray, had spent more time on it. There's one scene in particular where Jalen and Banks get arrested because they've stolen this computer out of the school lab. And the white police officers automatically assumed that Jalen's character hatched the plan, did the stealing and all that, when it was actually this little white boy. But it speaks so strongly to the assumption that if you are of color, you're automatically in the wrong. So I just wanted to point that out and talk about that. But these two young men, they're absolutely spectacular. Their performances are nothing short of miraculous. I can't wait to see what else comes their way career-wise. And let me just also say that Anne Hathaway knocks it out of the park. Her co-star, Jeremy Strong, is doing a little too much. I love him, but in this particular film, I feel like he's overacting a little bit. But Anne Hathaway is doing the daggone thing. So it's called Armageddon Time. It's a Focus Features joint, and it's going to hit on October 28th. Now, what's also going to hit on October 28th, I talked to y'all about this documentary called Louis Armstrong, Black and Blues. And I talked about it when I went to the Toronto Film Festival, right? So that particular film is going to hit Apple TV Plus this week on October 28th. And just to remind you what it is about, Louis Armstrong was a really famous jazz trumpeter. You would see he's most notably known for being in Hello Dolly with Barbra Streisand, the film version. So it's a definitive look at his life, his legacy as a founding father of jazz, the first pop star and cultural ambassador of the United States. He was loved by millions worldwide, but often mischaracterized for not doing enough to support the civil rights movement. And in reality, his fight for social justice was fueled by his celebrity and his willingness to break his silence on issues of segregation and patriotism. Just like Sydney, which is also streaming on Apple TV Plus. This is a really great watch. You guys should totally, totally, totally check it out. All right, so let's talk about Miss Run, Sweetheart Run. This is another film. It is crazy as hell. Ooh, I didn't mean to do that. Oops. Run, Sweetheart Run is crazy, crazy, crazy. It stars this young lady, Ella Balinska. You may remember her face and remember her from the Charlie's Angels reboot that they did with Kristen Stewart a little while ago. But this film, Run, Sweetheart Run, is is produced by Universal Pictures for Prime Video. It's directed by Shauna Fest, and it stars Ella Balinska, who's pictured here, and Pilu Aspak. Now, initially apprehensive rather, when her boss, Cherie, played by Ella, insists that she meets one of his most important clients. She's a single mom, and she's actually relieved and excited that she gets to meet the charismatic Ethan. He's easy on the eyes. You know, he has a nice big house. He's got some money. It's like, okay, I'm gonna be Cinderella for the night. So this influential businessman defies expectations, sweeps her off her feet. But baby, by the end of the night, when the two of them are by themselves, He reveals his true violent nature. She's battered and terrified, and she goes running for the hills, beginning a relentless game of cat and mouse with a bloodthirsty assailant hell bent on her utter destruction. This is an edge of your seat, really dark thriller where Cherie finds herself in the crosshairs of a conspiracy stronger and even more evil than she could have ever imagined. This is the type of film that will make you think twice the next time you decide you're going to go on a date or get set up by a friend. And it also lets you know that, again, the thing about women, when we get together, we make things happen. Women are doing it for themselves. There's a woman in the film, an older woman, that helps her get through that night. And this story is actually based on a true story of a date that the director had that went terribly awry. So without further ado, I'm going to let the director, Shauna, and I'm going to let Ella tell you more about Run, Sweetheart, Run. But first, we're going to start up with this interview from Ella Balinska from Run, Sweetheart, Run. Okay. Hi, Ella.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm loving this background situation you got going on.
I'm loving yours. Look at you go.
I'm like, you got the pink. I got the pink. We in sync, girl. What's going on?
Yeah, we're here. We both got the memo today.
We totally did. So I know that you're trained in like 12 different weapons. And I wanted to know if you had to use any of those weapons to defend yourself against Ethan, which one would you do?
I would probably run. No, in all seriousness, for Ethan, I'd probably say the one I feel most confident with, and that would probably be some sort of knife situation. It does mean close contact though, so it might not be the best idea. So I might have to get back to you on that.
Okay, because I was like, she's trained in all these things. I was very impressed by that. Very impressed by that.
That's on hyperfixation, you know?
Hilarious. I also want to talk about, you guys have this really dangerous game of cat and mouse going on. But I also know that in this world of online dating, that you never know what you're going to get. Like somebody can post a really sexy picture of themselves and look like a nice person. And then you meet them and they turn out to be an Ethan. I don't know if you've been online dating or what your situation is, but do you think you would judge a book by its cover, or would you dig a little deeper and find out more about that person?
I'd for sure dig a little deeper. I think I'm always more comfortable, if I'm meeting someone, to know that there's 1 degree of separation between me and somebody I'm close with. It's just insurance.
I know that's right. Oh, you're hilarious. I kind of love you. I do want to talk to you about that jail scene, the one where he's right up in your face. How many takes of that did you guys have to do? And was there a rehearsal process for you to get that comfortable? Because I never saw you flinch. And so I know if somebody was up in my face like that, my eyes would be blinking or closed or flinching or something.
So in that moment, we really wanted to really bring up the tension. And funnily enough, in that scene, Pilu, eternal gentleman, so wonderful and charming, he has the gift of spontaneity. So we really did not know what we were getting from take to take, especially with his rhythms. So everything that happened pretty much from one take to the next was completely different within the boundaries that we were set. And that was terrifying. And so what you're seeing in that scene is pretty much my reaction.
It looked very real. That's why I asked. I'm like, is she acting, or is that like, I was like, was that an improv situation where they just kind of let him go? And because I was like, that looks really real. One last question before we break away and let you get on with the rest of your day or morning, wherever you happen to be. How do you feel about the fact that there's still so much stigma attached to women and the way they dress? Stigma being attached to that, like you asked for it or you wanted it, or or why did that happen to you? Even those chicks on the street were kind of judging her when she asked to use their phone.
I definitely would say the women on the street were pretty much going more off of the blood and gore that was dripping from her head. But I would say it's really still part of the bigger conversation that needs to be had in terms of people being able to dress freely and wear what they like. We all have a right to walk down the street in peace and or run in Cherie's case. And I think it was a great way of Shauna. She put in so many hints in this film as to little things that women can see of themselves, things that might have happened to you or I or someone else watching, which add to the terror of what this character is going through. So it sort of lends its voice, the film, and then that happening in the film, it lends its voice to the discussion around that, for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Ella. I loved your room. I loved your performance in the film, and I appreciate you taking time with me today.
No, absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time. Honestly, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Bye.
Let me tell you something. Ella is so effervescent and has all this energy on screen. Baby, when I tell you she's a completely different person in this movie, she's a completely different person in this movie. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play this interview with her director so that she can tell you for herself what happened with her. And then I'm going to share something that happened with a friend of mine that made me immediately go, oh my God, I can't believe there's a movie made like this.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I have so many questions.
Ooh, let's do it.
So first and foremost, what was the impetus or the inspiration for this story? Because it was terrifying.
Yes, I think it's a shared experience that all women have been living in. It's a day. It's the man that's sitting opposite you in the bus that makes you feel uncomfortable. It's your boss that feels inappropriate. It's the situations that women feel unsafe in that we're in every single day. And it's the anger that comes out of that. And it's how exhausted we feel. But, it was loosely based on an actual date that I had where the guy looked perfect on paper. He was, a rich guy that lived in the Hollywood Hills, and I was a waitress at the time. And I got in my black dress and I had this really romantic date. And I went back into his house with him, and it ended badly. And I had to get out of there. And I ended up running from Hollywood Hills to West LA, where I was living at the time. So that was one of those true experiences that, obviously made a huge impression on me, and I think about often. And I thought, if I was ever to tell a horror story, it would have to be based on something personal and a truth that I've lived in. And that was it for me.
Well, you know what? Good for you for taking something that was traumatizing, I'm sure, and turning it into a folklore tale for everybody else. I remember there was a girl that lived in my building that had an experience very similar to this.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And it was a really big Hollywood executive, and they had put an ad in Craigslist looking for a date for a premiere, and she was so excited, and she came back that night because I babysat her dog, and she came back that night, and it was just horrible. So when I saw this, my brain immediately flipped to that moment in time. I was like, oof. I also want to talk to you about the idea of breaking the fourth wall, because I thought that was really cool. I've never seen that done in this particular type of film. You want to talk to me about that a little bit?
Well, I wanted to create the most powerful villain I could. And for me as a filmmaker, that villain controls my camera. He's controlling the narrative. He's in power. And he's showing us what he wants to see. And so, he's this charming, wealthy, successful man publicly, but behind closed doors, when he shuts us out of that room, is where he becomes his true evil self. And so what I really wanted to do and was excited by was to have our protagonist, Cherie, reclaim that camera at the end of the film and make it her own. And through
I loved how you did that at the end, where she was the one that turned the camera around as he was, meeting his demise, so to speak.
Yeah.
I love that moment. That was a very powerful moment. I also want to talk to you about what was it about Cherie and Palu that made you cast them in those roles? Because they seemed perfectly cast, and they seemed to have really, really intense chemistry.
They did. You know, Pilu is a commanding force, and you've seen him play a lot of bad guys, and he does them very, very well. And I also knew this incredibly charming side of Pilu too, that I got to show, where he could be. I mean, the beginning of the movie is like a rom-com almost, you know, it's boy meets girl, cute date. And so I needed someone who could be incredibly charming and charismatic and then turn into a full-on frightening demon. With Ella Balinska, she's just a force. And there was so much in this film, whether it was the violence of the attacks or, you know, his true form, that I didn't want to shoot, that I knew I was going to have to rely on my actor's ability, what was happening on their face, to convey how terrifying Pilu was. And Ella was able to communicate that. Like, so it's such a gift, like, to be able to stay on an actor's face for as long as I do with Ella. You know, she holds the camera for a minute. Some of the takes are a minute, just right here with her. And not a lot of actors can do that. A lot of people, you just get bored and walk right out, but you're so with Ella. So, you know, she just takes you on this ride.
She really does. I want to talk to you about that jail scene, because I spoke to Ella about this, and I was compelled by that particular scene because he was right up in her face. Yeah. And I said to Ella, I'm like, I couldn't tell. I said, it looked really real. Either you are like the most phenomenal actress ever, or that was like some real intense intimidation up in your face going on. And I wanted to talk to you about, and she explained to me what went down with that scene, but I want to get from your point of view why you let them do a free for all with that. Was it something in particular you were looking for in that scene to capture?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was just a trust there between the actors. There was a big trust between Pilu and Ella. And after we shot that scene, Pilu felt horrible. He immediately was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay, Ella?" And it was visceral for her. She was shaking, you know? And as a director, you're watching this and thinking, this is gold. This is beautiful. This is real and visceral. And this is true horror, right? This is what I'm capturing. And then as a person, you're like, I should never have let Ella do that. You know, is she okay? Can she do this? But she's such a pro. She was like, I'm okay. I'm okay. But everybody was terrified by Pilu on that day. It was, you know, sometimes when you're shooting on set, people are looking at their camera, I mean, their phone, emailing, or, you know, eating in the background and just being quiet and kind of bored. Everybody was just like silent. You could feel the tension on the set.
I could feel the tension through my screen. I was like, oh Lord, what is happening right now? I jumped a couple of times. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh, okay. We going there. All right. I'm gonna go there with you, Shayna. I'm gonna go there with you. I was like, oh Lord, have mercy. But it was very well done. And I just want to applaud you for that. I applaud you for bringing that story to the screen. I'm so happy that you were able to find something positive with your story to turn it into something else. And I look forward to the next time we have an opportunity to speak. I really do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Listen, I enjoyed talking to her. I hate that I mispronounced her name at the end. Her name is Shauna, not Shayna. So sorry, girl. I didn't mean to do that on purpose. Let me just say one more thing that my boy Brandon has said to me. He also said that he has been collecting My Hero Academia manga. I think that means magnets. Got you, Brandon. I got you. I got you. All right. So I know I had been talking about this film called My Policeman with Harry Styles in it. It's in limited release right now. Excuse me. It's also a Focus Features film. It's directed by Michael Grandage, and it stars Harry Styles, Emma Corrin, and Rupert Everett, Gina McKee, and David Dawson. I have these interviews that I did with Gina, Emma, and David. I'm going to play them for you now. And remember that this goes into wide release on November 4th. So here is my interview with Emma. And y'all might remember Emma Corrin from playing Princess Diana in a couple of seasons ago in The Crown. And David is a former ballet dancer, but never mind. Just take a look and a listen. You guys were fantabulous in this film. Really, really, really enjoyed you so very much. It was such an intense performance. And there was a possibility to straddle a line that couldn't be crossed, but you guys never straddled it, and you crossed it spectacularly. So good on both of you for that. I want to talk a little bit about the struggle of being conflicted about one's sexuality and doing what one is expected. Patrick doesn't seem to have that problem, but the person that he's in love with does. So if you could just speak to that a little bit, David, and then we'll go on to Emma to piggyback on it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so suppose you've got the three characters, and I think Brighton's the fourth character in this, and then the fifth perhaps is the world in which they live and the laws of that society in which they live, and how it affects these three people for the rest of their life. So yeah, it's a long journey of self-discovery for Tom, I think, but because of the world in which they live.
And I think for Marion as well, she's sort of living in a society which she maybe doesn't completely understand. At least when she sends that letter to the police, she doesn't really understand the repercussions of what she's doing. You know, she falls in love with someone and all of the power and innocence that holds, and then is badly hurt and acts out of the rawness of that feeling. And yet she doesing understand the forces at play, which are dictating.
But does she really? Because she's in love, and she wants this person for herself. So she is doing what she needs to do by whatever means necessary to keep him close. Don't you think that action may have instigated her with that letter?
Yeah, maybe on some level, I think. But I don't think she ever intended for him to go to prison. I think that she did. No. I don't think she knew how it would play out, which is the heartbreaking bit. And I think you see in Gina's performance the way that haunts her for the rest of her life and brings her no happiness, really. You know, she has Tom, but she doesn't have him in the way that she wanted. It doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I'm not trying to talk about the way you, what your intention was in playing the character. You know, I'm an actress, so I understand how all of that works. So it was not my intent to insult you on that front. I just want to say that. But I do understand why you did what you did, characterization wise, and I was there for all of it. I'm just saying. I was there for all of it. Can we talk a little bit about how in that day and age in England in particularly, because in the United States, when someone was gay or came out as quote unquote othered, as some people like to say, it was met with shame, disdain, and it came with a bunch of slurs and names and violence and all of that. Do you think that these, particularly your character, Emma, with Marion, that there was a little bit of ignorance that comes along with that for her? Because when she finds out about her good friend, the way she reacted to it was just like, oof.
Yeah, definitely. I think so much ignorance on her part. But again, I think she is to blame for that, but also society in itself was very much to blame. Yeah.
And do you think, and David, do you think there was a little bit of ignorance on your part in believing that somehow this could eventually work out to your advantage?
I think that's what makes love so dangerous. I think there's a moment in which there's no going back. I think that's what makes the story so dangerous for the three of them.
Cool. Well, thank y'all for your time today. I appreciate you. That was a really interesting interview because they were so serious, and Emma was a little distracted because her doggy was in the room. So she was trying to figure out what the hell her dog was doing. It was funny. I'll turn this light around. You know, I'm always messing with my light. But she was messing around with her dog and seeing what her dog was doing. But anywho, that was that one. But this interview with Gina McKee, who actually plays the older version of Marion in My Policeman, is a real it's a real page turner, a real eye opener. So take a look and a listen to this interview with Gina McKee, who plays Marion. And I said Focus Features, but I meant to say Prime Video, in the Prime Video film My Policeman. Hi, Gina. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm very well, thanks,
Oh,
Ella. How are you doing?
good. I am doing fantabulous. I so enjoyed your performance in this film. I love watching actors who totally encapsulate the screen without saying very little, and it's all right here in the face. And you're a master at that.
Thanks.
You're an absolute master at that. But having said that, this theme of this film centers around one's sexuality. And I was just wondering how you felt about your husband being someone who was conflicted about his sexuality versus what society expected of him.
I think it's a really potent point because you meet these people in the 1950s when they're young, and this triangle of people who are drawn together by love. And as you touched on, they're torn apart by prejudice. The repercussions of what they do to one another and what happens to them when they're young indelibly marks their lives. And we meet them 4 decades later when there is a catalyst to try and look to the past to try and repair, perhaps. And I think when I started to look into this, you can't, obviously I know it academically, but when you look about what was happening in England at that time and what was happening to the gay community in England, particularly to gay men, and how that affects everybody, so they all become victims of that, it's potent. And I thought, well, this is fantastic, because we need to understand that it ain't that long ago that we've made progress, but we haven't made nearly enough progress. And it's always threatened with regression. And we need to keep that in mind. And I know it academically, but I felt it in my heart when I started to really explore this.
Yes, and I could feel it in your performance as Marion. Marion is a little bit of a quiet fire. She lets stuff kind of simmer inside, but when she decided she needed to speak up and speak out, she did so fabulously. How close are you with Marion?
I'd like to hope that I have that kind of courage, but I'm not sure I have. So I don't know if I'm like her at all. But where I can relate is that as a woman, I wasn't, obviously I'm older I wasn't born in the 50s, I was born in the 60s. But as a woman, I understand how we are brought up not to be on the front foot in terms of being vocal. I understand that dynamic very well. And so that's something that I feel in common with Marion.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because women of that era were expected and taught to behave a certain way. Mm-hmm. And Marion makes the conscious decision to be very forthcoming in her attempt to make this marriage work no matter what.
I think that there's a huge amount of pressure. Sorry, you were saying. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I think there's a huge amount of pressure on all of them, obviously. But the pressure, if we're just talking about Marion, her pressure is to make this work, because she's prejudiced too. And she's ignorant for sure. I mean, about so many things. She's incredibly young. You've got this this person hungry for life, but she's young and her experience is nil. And the pressures of society mean that she is pushed into that corner.
And I was trying to ask questions that weren't revealing. I think we did a fantabulous job, and I think that is a really great point to end on.
It's really lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too, Gina. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Bye. I love Gina. I've seen Gina in 5,000 different films, and Gina brings it every time. And it was really lovely to interview her. So I just want to recap and tell you guys what I talked about and what's going to come up next week. We talked about Ticket to Paradise, which is an Universal Pictures movie directed by Ol Parker, starring Julia Roberts, George Clooney, Caitlin Dever, Maxime Boutier. It is also streaming on Peacock, the NBC streaming channel. I also want you to check out Call Jane, which is a roadside attractions joint dropping on October 28th, directed by Phyllis Nagy, starring Elizabeth Banks, Sigourney Weaver, Wumi Musako, and Kate Mara. You should also check out this little joint Armageddon Time, which is a focus. I'm always talking about, I just want every film to be a focus features film. Armageddon Time, which is a focus features film written and directed by James Gray, starring Anne Hathaway, Jeremy Strong, and pictured in this film Anthony Hopkins, Banks Rapetta, and Jalen Webb. I also want you to check out Louis Armstrong Black and Blues, which will be streaming on Apple TV Plus, directed by Sasha Jenkins, dropping on October 28th as well. And also dropping on October 28th is this young lady, Ella Balinska, in her film Run, Sweetheart, Run. It is produced by Universal Pictures for Prime Video, and it drops also on October 28th. Next week, I have interviews with Elizabeth Banks and Sigourney Weaver from their Call Jane film. I'm finding my page. I also have interviews with the cast of Manifest, which is on NBC. They just got renewed for another season. I'll be reviewing All Quiet on the Western Front by Netflix, which actually is dropping this week, but I didn't have time to watch it this week, so I will watch it and give y'all that review next week. And y'all know what's coming up. Wakanda Forever, baby. Talking about the sequel to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I will be seeing that this week. I will be talking about it. So next week, we'll be hitting some Wakanda Forever and talking all about it, unless I'm embargoed. Otherwise, I'm going to have a different plan. But I want to thank y'all for joining in, whether you're here in real time or whether you joined me afterwards after I already taped it. I have one more I already said that comment from Brandon. Never mind. But I want to thank Brandon for always popping in and supporting me. I appreciate you. I really do. And again, I am Carla Renata, the Curvy Film Critic. I shoot straight from the hip. Click that bell for notifications. Give me a big thumbs up if you are on the YouTube, if you are on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook Live watching this. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. So happy that you popped in. And yeah, so that's what's happening. And I will see you guys next time. I'll catch you on the flip side. Love, peace, and hair grease, and deuces, baby.